Did we come back from an ad break? Welcome back to ASL Chats. Here we have Dylan, our IT specialist. Would you like to give yourself a bit of an introduction?
Yeah, how's it going, everybody? Name's Dylan, otherwise known as Jiminy Billy Bob. Don't worry, it's a mouthful, I know. Been working in the tech space for about 20 years now. A mix of stuff between computers, network, infrastructure, you name it. I dabble in pretty much anything tech.
Amazing intro. I did like 20 retakes, so that was 10 out of 10. Let's go straight into it. We're talking about graphics cards today. So what are you currently running?
So currently in my system itself, I'm running a 2060 Super. It's obviously second generation of the new NVIDIA stuff. It was technically RT, which is cool. I also have a 1070 in my other machine, but that's Gen 1, no RT cores, and obviously now we're looking towards the 50 series.
Yeah, that's exciting stuff that NVIDIA has announced. Apparently everyone in NVIDIA is a millionaire, even the interns.
Bad news, they did lose about 350 million today as of this time. But I mean, that's peanuts for them.
Let's see what happens. You know, stocks are always speculative, so we can get there. What do you think what are the major differences between the different generations? So let's say your 3060s and your 4080s.
So
4060s.
4060s, yeah. So like within series, so obviously you have all your like 60s and 70s and 80s, obviously keyed for specific use cases or markets. 60s are your like good mid-range entry performance cards. You're going to get good bang for buck, good value. Your 70s is like a little bit of a tier up. You're like not prepared to spend the 80 or 90 money. 80s like you're an enthusiast gamer that wants high refresh rate, high res. 90s, you have money to blow and you want the best. you just want the best. And it goes through from the 30 series all the way up to the 50 series, the same applies. But the performance loss per is minimal, but from generation to generation, there is a significant performance increase, on average about 30%.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like from like say a 30, or from now, so from the 4090 to like a 5090, you're getting 30% performance increase. But price to performance value, the 50 series is actually the worst.
Okay.
Because what you're getting, what you're paying for the new cards, you may be getting about 5 to 10% of actual performance per dollar, basically.
Okay.
Value on that. Whereas from the 30 series to from a 3090 to a 4090, you would have got about 80% performance value.
Wow.
Just because of the price points, because the 3090 and the 4090, when they launched, they were the same MSRP, which is very helpful in that regard. But I mean, we do have new tech in 50 series. The AI and all the extra stuff that comes with it is what everybody's looking for. So if you're into not just gaming, graphical editing and the like, 50 series is going to be key this season going forward.
Well, that is so much information that is amazingly useful to me that I had no idea.
Yeah.
I guess to throw on a little bit of an additional question, I'm running a 3080 Ti.
Yes.
What does the Ti have to do with it?
So generally what NVIDIA does is they started this with the 1080 series. So originally 1080 came out, everybody's like, cool. 1080 Ti came out, which is cool. Sometimes pronounce it as Ti, believe it or not. I don't understand it, but Ti, it's just letters. It's normally like a refresh of the same chip, generally, and they added more memory or they changed the memory generation. So instead of being like GDDR5, they'll go GDDR5X or 6.
Right.
Whereas that's what they've done. With 40 series, they went overboard with it. 30 series kept that whole, we'll go from a normal card to a Ti. With 40 series, they went usual, okay, let's go normal, let's go Ti, let's go super and super Ti. So whereas like the super Ti is now is what your 4090 was, basically. So a 4080 super Ti basically is a 4090, just a slightly lower memory reference speed and stuff. But performance-wise, you get slightly newer tech in it, and it's on par or sometimes more power efficient, so you actually can get better performance out of it.
That's really good to know because full disclosure, Dylan made my PC like 2 or 3 years ago and he recommended the 3080 Ti and when he told me the differences between that and different cards, it made a lot more sense why I would invest the money in that instead. So
you don't get dumbfounded by the like tech names behind it. Try find something that's in your price point. Like for example, the 3050s are your good entry level cards, but you might have a bit more budget to buy a slightly generation older, like a 3060, and you get better performance out of it. But 3050 would be like basic entry these days.
100%. So with all this information that you now have on what the new generations are about and what those breakpoints are, do you think the new series is worth it for your average gamer?
For your average gamer, if you're coming from a 20 series or 30 series, you're going to see a performance increase because you're going to get access to some of the newer AI or multi-frame generation or frame generation technology. Frame generation is available in 40 series and 50 series, but multi-frame generation with extra AI is going to be cool. You're going to have extra features that you can do with graphical like rendering if you do some projects with it, or if you're going to play gaming. The only downside of 50 series at the moment is it is with specifically with frame generation and multi-frame generation is it's not advisable if you're going to play a first-person shooter title or a game that relies on your frames to be consistent. Because the multi-frame generation, what it does is it's now overlaying extra frames in there for you. Mm-hmm. So it's rendering the frame after the fact. So now you're watching something at 60 FPS, but it's rendering at 240 because it's now adding the extra frames after the fact. So you're getting, it's like watching your jelly wobble on the plate. You can see it and it's going side to side. It's not the best experience, and that's almost the same feeling you're going to get with the 50 series going forward. So it's good for single player games and the like, but as soon as you throw it into like a game that requires high frame rate, instant reaction times, don't enable those type of things. You're still going to get 30% performance increase on having a 50 series card on general, and you still have the functionality for it. So in all honesty, if you're coming from a 20 series card, time to upgrade. 30 series, 40 series, the performance increase isn't significant enough yet. So unless you have the money to burn or get it on a good price, stick with 40 series at the moment.
It was so interesting what you said about the first-person shooters because I guess based on just my assumption, we all know FPS games are fairly heavy on graphics card usage. I would assume that if you play FPS, it's almost like, it's not a necessity, but you'd want to get the next the card. But as Dylan just said, comes with an asterisk. Be aware of those kind of things when you are looking at a card.
I mean, take into consideration certain titles. I'm just using CS as a general here. You can have 400 frames in it. It doesn't make your gameplay better. But going from 60 to 100 makes a big difference. So if you can get a consistent 120 to 180 FPS, as well as matching it on your frame rate on your monitor, so 180 hertz or 144 hertz monitor, you're good. That's ideal. That's where you want to be sitting at. If you can still also make it look good at 120 frames per second, you're good to go.
All right. And say it's my birthday next week, and I want to ask my mommy and daddy for a new graphics card. What do you think is a good entry point in today's state of games? Maybe I play some Fortnite, some simple games, nothing crazy, but I wanted to invest in my first computer and my first graphics card. What do you think is a good starting point?
So if you're starting off the bat and you've got a base, like just say a general home desktop, and has the ability to run a graphics card, throwing in something like a 3050, some of the new Intel cards not available locally, they're very limited stock. But ideally, you're looking in that region of about $4.5 to $5 for a graphics card. You can pretty much get anything medium low or medium high on 60 to 120 FPS with a bit of tweaks. And 3050 really covers that for that price point. It's a good go-to card. It's a good foundation card. And you can still do some of the newer stuff with ray tracing and stuff on there. So you almost get more frames. Like I was saying with the multi-frame generation earlier, and the normal like frame generation, you can get more for what you get out of it instead of just getting the 30 or 60 FPS you'd get on a normal card, for example.
Okay, fantastic. And when considering a graphics card, what is the next important component you'd say that would complement the graphics card in terms of performance?
So the biggest bottlenecks when it comes to anything with graphics is the system itself as a whole and how much bottlenecking can happen. So that gets down to your processor. Because if you think about it, that information has to go from processor to graphics card back and forward constantly. That's why you'll also notice the graphics card slot on a motherboard is close to the actual processor to shorten that distance to travel from the graphics card to the CPU. So a bad CPU or an old generation CPU can actually bottleneck your system anything between 20 and 50%. So if, say for example, you're running an old 9th gen Intel that's about 6 years old, and let's say you put in a 4060, you're still going to get good frames, but you can start bottlenecking your system where your processor will start throttling down. So if you ran a benchmark, your processor would then say, hey, this PC is only going to run at 80 FPS. You put that same card in another system that's maybe 2 years newer than it, and you're going to get your 120 FPS. So CPU is important. CPU and graphics must be within 2 to 3 years of each other, ideally. You don't want to have, you can still get gaming performance out of it, but the way games are developed now is you'd rather have about 2 to 3 years of actual difference between your processor and graphics card, either side of it. A 3-year-old graphics card in a more modern system, the processor won't be the bottleneck, the graphics card will be the bottleneck. And again, another key component is memory. Make sure you're at least having 16 gigs of RAM, regardless of your system. No matter what generation it is, how old it is, whether it's DDR4, DDR5, 16 gigs is ideal for gaming in general.
Thank you so much. Maybe next time we'll get you to make a whole PC on podcast.
Yeah, I don't mind. It's always good to talk over it. I will be doing a surprise thing next month for a local content creator for another brand.
Excited. Well, maybe we can show it off just a little bit when we get there.
Yeah.
But thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week and have a great week.
Cheers, guys.
Good old Asa. This will be the second year. I'll kill everyone. That was such a good take. I'll take you from the top. But something that I felt that the schools has not have, I hate grammar.